And a path to prosperity, I believe that America's best days can still be ahead. And I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution.
You made it to Friday at the Reid Revolution. I'm John Reid. Very glad that you are with me here as we get started on a great weekend. Is there snow coming up in Northern Virginia, in D.C.? I was checking things out this morning. Are we about to have a rough weekend weather-wise? You know what? I should have checked that before we came on the air. Let's just look real quick. You know, I hate the weather. Special weather statement in Washington. Conditions starting Friday. Light rain forecasted. Maybe some snow, I guess, today. Today is when there's an issue. Sunday, maybe some snow. And then let me just see where I live, whether we're dealing with that. Hopefully not. Well, I guess Sunday we have the possibility of it too. All right. You know, we're not Chicago. Everybody freaks out. I don't freak out. Now, I'm not sending little kids to school, so I don't have to worry about the same things that parents do. But the fact that there are people, I saw a story the other day that there are people in Central Virginia who still have not left their house after the snow and the ice 3 weeks ago. I mean, are you in a wheelchair? What's going on? How can that possibly be? Are you living in a cave and there's no sun to melt any of this? The temperature doesn't change where you are. That makes no sense to me. 3 weeks later, that some people still haven't left their house. You know, you toughen up, everybody. I thought it was crazy that 2 days after the snow, people were still canceling school and canceling work and canceling things. So yeah, I'm just throwing down the gauntlet here. Unless it's just a blizzard on Sunday, we've already missed so many days. I would advise everybody to um, be bold. You know, don't let the white stuff outside scare you from actually leaving your house. You got to go ahead and live your life, or we're just going to be frozen out for no reason. If you've been to Antarctica, if you've been to Alaska, if you've been to places where they deal with this on a regular basis, Chicago is another place I guess we put in the mix. Boston, you just got to keep going. You can't collapse from society because of a little bad weather. At least not an extended period of time. It's a very bizarre situation. All right, so our top story this morning, and I'm waiting for something to happen here that updates the story or changes the story, is the decision by that Tazewell County judge to put a hold on the gerrymandering vote that was supposed to start on March the 6th. So right around the corner. And, you know, there's stuff that has to be done if you're going to have an election, because our wonderful friends, the Democrats, have created this ridiculous 45 days of voting. And they've said that, oh, yeah, we'll send out, you know, hundreds of thousands of ballots to everybody all over the state. You know, just put them in the mail, let them send them back. If they actually make it to you, you can send it back to us. I mean, we are probably the dumbest people for allowing this new system to be put in place. I don't know that I can tell you this person is cheating. I don't know that I can do that. But I can tell you that people cheat. People steal. There's a lot of power and a lot of money on the line. And in this case, the Democrats here in Virginia have concocted this entire ridiculous, outrageous, illegal gerrymandering plan because they're determined to get Trump. That is their motivation. They're determined to take over the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate if they possibly can, and do whatever they can to destroy Trump after the midterm elections this November. And if they can't destroy him and impeach him and remove him from office, which is what I think they really want to do, and then they want to put him in jail, and they probably want to set up a guillotine in the middle of the town square and start killing people like you and me. You think I'm kidding? I'm not really kidding. I think there's that kind of visceral, nasty, hostile, violent mindset that has taken hold with a large group of people. That is the mindset. I mean, you know, I don't think everybody who's on social media talking about how Yeah, and I mean, they're obviously mentally ill people, but the Democrat Party is filled with mentally ill people. They're talking about murdering us. I got a problem with that. Excuse me, I take exception to the idea that that's acceptable political debate. And on a personal level, no, I'm not okay with you constantly threatening my life and my livelihood and my freedom. And that's what's happening here. So forgive me when I go to social media and I see not just one whack job, but hundreds, thousands of people talking that way. You will just have to forgive me when I have a negative reaction to you then pushing the buttons and pulling the levers of power to try to empower yourselves, where if you really did want to cause me a problem, you could do that. I'm not going along with it. I'm not going to go along with that. And we were fools in 2020 for not raising hell when cities were on fire, when police officers were being attacked, when statues were coming down, when little old ladies were being abused, when people were so nasty and disgusting that here in Richmond they were going and uh, relieving themselves. That's a polite way of putting it, on the steps of the church on Monument Avenue, and most of mainstream media celebrated it as some sort of bohemian festival. Oh, look, they set up a basketball hoop out in front of the Robert E. Lee statue. Isn't that great? No, that's not great. No, that's not great. Graffiti with the F word and the N word and denouncing police officers. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. In fact, I'm revolted by it. I find it offensive. Um, I find it disgusting. I think it's a symbol of the degradation of the society. So please don't act like that was some summer of love. It was not. It was a summer of chaos and criminality. And those of us who want to hold on to a civilized society, who actually want to obey the rules and respect our neighbors and have a decent place to live, we were not vocal enough in 2020. I was, and I took a beating for it. Not physically, but I took a beating for it. But now you're getting a second opportunity here to stand up against the weaponization of the institutions of power. And this 45 days of voting and the constant mail in ballots, and then this fight over, oh God, I mean, how insulting is it that the Democrats constantly believe or constantly telling us that married women don't have IDs that match their new name? I mean, what world are you living in? Seriously, what world are you living in? Have you bought a house? Have you bought a car? Have you been people routinely deal with marriages and name changes. I mean, now I've got tons of friends who have these hyphenated names. They're not just putting that when they sign their Christmas card. They've gone through the process to change it. And it's not that heavy a lift to make that change. It's such a bogus argument that the Democrats are making here. First, they insulted blacks and said that blacks couldn't find their way to get an ID, or it was too expensive or too complicated. How insulting to black citizens to act like they can't do that. Now, the new thing is that the SAVE Act prevents married women from voting because they won't have IDs that match their name. Baloney, baloney. I mean, why are we even listening to this kind of garbage? And here in Virginia, the Democrats, I think, finally got an audience. Oh, they're so excited to get up to Washington, D.C. and meet with their friends in the party in D.C. And D.C. has convinced them that, oh my God, if you can steal 4 or 5 more votes in Virginia, we'll invite you to all the fancy parties up here in D.C. and you'll be the toast of the town up here in D.C. And so, like drug dealers and street thugs do, Don Scott, the speaker, and Louise Lucas, and the rest of this social justice warrior ghetto caucus that they've got, they have jumped to try to take action here. But the problem is they didn't obey the law. The laws that they wrote, they're not even touching the bases as they head towards home. They're that arrogant and that obnoxious that they won't touch the bases. They won't obey the law. And one judge has the guts to call him out on it. This guy down in Tazewell. I mean, he needs, I hate to say it, but have somebody else start your car every morning, because we're not dealing with the old Virginians. We're dealing with this new crowd of street thugs from out of town who, I mean, they're vicious, nasty people. So I think that's a problem when you're dealing with this kind of issue, with a judge who's bold enough to stand up and issue an injunction and stop the election from going forward. But I have a question this morning. Are we going to suddenly get a news alert that the Supreme Court of Virginia has stepped in to allow the election? We'll be waiting to see whether that comes down, and the Supreme Court, who were very I can say it. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything to these people, and I don't really particularly like them. I'm always polite when I see these people at events around Richmond, but I mean, case after case after case, they've botched it and shown that they are not actually interested in enforcing the law fairly. It seems like it's hyper political, whether it was, uh, I mean, the thing that I constantly come back to is taking the statues down illegally. I mean, every rule and law broken, every covenant broken, and they just didn't give a damn. They may not like Robert E. Lee. I don't care what you think about Robert E. Lee. I'm interested in whether we're going to be a community that obeys the law or not. And apparently that doesn't matter anymore. Wish I'd gotten the memo before I paid my taxes that the law really doesn't matter. Somehow I think they'll come after me about that. But anyway, I'm waiting to see whether that's going to, we're going to hear something for the Supreme Court. So this Tazewell County Circuit Court judge granted an emergency injunction blocking what Republicans call an unlawful April 21st redistricting referendum while the case is heard in court. It's a temporary restraining order barring state and local election officials from moving forward with the planned vote. It handed the Republican National Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee and U.S. Reps Ben Cline from Botetourt County and Morgan Griffith from Salem, both Republicans, a brief reprieve in a high-stakes fight that could reshape Virginia's congressional map ahead of midterms. And the Democrats hate this because they have, quite frankly, I mean, they won the last election. They are showing up in Richmond, and they're showing up in courthouses all across and county buildings all across the state, and they're acting like they own this place. And I love to see somebody just slap them back and say, you won an election, but it doesn't mean that you've won everything. You still have to obey the law, which is a difficult concept for Democrats to grasp, that they have to obey the law. So we're going to talk in a few minutes to former Delegate Tim Anderson, who's kind of been on the forefront of a couple of different efforts to stop this illegal action from taking place in the courts. There's a push that I hope you have seen on my Facebook page, the Reid Revolution Facebook page, where different boards of supervisors and city councils have the opportunity to make a statement that they believe this is illegal and decline to participate in it. Now, I don't know how that plays. Does that throw a monkey wrench into this, or does that suppress the vote or provide the opportunity for somebody to throw out votes? I don't know. We'll talk to Tim about that. We're also going to talk to a city council person from Lynchburg who is very animated on this issue a little later, Marty Mischens, and we'll get some impression on that. And then if this thing does move forward starting March 6th, then see, this is the other thing. I mean, the clock is running here, both from a practical standpoint to get the work done and get the ballots printed and get them in the mail. And they're spending millions of dollars on that. Is that cool? Is that all right with you? That we're going to spend millions of taxpayer dollars just in order to placate the Democrats and to nationalize Virginia politics and change the Constitution of Virginia? I think that should be worrisome. But I have to tell you, after everybody just let $100 million get flushed down the toilet at VCU when they didn't build that building, I mean, nobody gave a damn about that, including the Republicans. Nobody cared. If I'll be critical of my own party. To me, I still live in a world where $100 million is a lot of money. And the fact that we let a state institution led by Michael Rao, the president of VCU, just toss that money away. No big deal. It's a big deal. And no one's ever really been held accountable for it. No one cares. No one talks about it. So I talk about $5 million being spent on this election, and that's nothing compared to the $100 million. I mean, I must be living in an alternate universe if you don't think that that kind of money is significant and you're not careful with it. That's problematic. Oh, one of the other issues that a commenter just noted in the chat and that have popped up on the screen is Democrats are so disingenuous here and so deceptive that they have written the language of the referendum in a way that is completely misleading. And as the judge pointed out, it implies from the way the referendum is written that if you vote against the proposal, you're being unfair, which, there's just no neutrality in the presentation here at all. So I think the Democrats are showing every single one of us. I mean, even if you're a moderate Democrat, come on, level with me. You realize that this is a bad play and that this is an arrogance that is unbecoming of someone who's in a leadership role. I don't know about you. I still expect Republicans and Democrats to take leadership roles and be responsible. And, we're all playing for keeps here. I get it. But there are just some basic rules. Like athletics, if you find out that somebody has put a brick in their boxing glove, do you just shrug that off and act like that doesn't matter? Or are you really offended? You're fine with the boxing match, but you can't come into the ring with a brick in the boxing glove. What makes you mad? I mean, I'd like to know what these people can do that would actually make you angry and motivate you to take action against them. Not in the streets, not setting things on fire, not killing people like Democrats, some of the Democrat activists do, but speak up about some of these issues. Now, maybe this pause will be good for us, and we'll talk to Tim about that in just a couple of moments. Here's another issue that I think that we need to pay attention to. It's the raw sewage in the Potomac that started 2 days after Abigail Spanberger was inaugurated as governor. That's bad timing. Sorry about that. But 240 million gallons of raw sewage into the Potomac River. And the President Trump, is correct to point out that this is a real problem. And Wes Moore, the Democrat in Maryland, who's wrecked their budget and is in the process of wrecking their economy, even worse than it was previously in Maryland, and Governor Spanberger don't seem to be able to get this under control. And now I'm seeing stories about how it's going to take 9 months to repair the pipes. And the president correctly said yesterday, look, if you guys can't take care of it, call me. We'll let the federal government take care of it. And I can just promise you that if Winsome Sears had been elected as governor of Virginia, this wouldn't be a second or third tier story. This would be a first tier story, and they would be blaming it on Winsome Sears as if she was standing there flushing the toilet 1,000 times to pump the sewage into the Potomac River. We'd have every environmental wacko all over the state, at the state capitol and out there showing us dead birds and dead fish. There would be this entire PR movement to try to blame this on Republicans. But because Abigail Spanberger is the governor and she's got a D behind her name, everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders. Well, this one's actually serious. This one needs to be taken seriously, and I'd like to know what the governor intends to do about it. And to echo the president, if you can't handle it on the state level, if it's going to be too expensive because you don't have the money to do it because you have these 45 days of early voting, all year round, every special election, everything. I mean, if you can't handle it, let's let the feds do it. And I think Trump, who oddly enough does seem to care about the environment. I mean, I know everybody says he doesn't. He seems to actually care about the environment. He cares about the survival of the people here. I think he will jump in and get something done pretty quick. Those are our top issues to talk about. Tim Anderson joins us in just a couple of minutes. I don't know if he's in court this morning or where he's traveling to, but we'll check in with him. So let's take a quick break and we'll rejoin in just a moment here on the Reid Revolution. Back now on this Friday morning on the Reid Revolution, I'm John Reid. Former Virginia Republican delegate Tim Anderson joins us now to talk about the news late yesterday that a judge in Tazewell County had issued an injunction on this special election to gerrymander the state. Tim, what's the update? I've been waiting all morning to hear whether the Virginia Supreme Court is going to step in and undo this like they did with his last ruling. What's your take on it?
Good morning, John. Glad to be here. I am a passenger in a vehicle. This is why you can see the trees going by fast.
Gotcha.
Driving out to Tazewell right now. We're doing a stop today. So Tazewell's a funny place, right? Because it's making state news, but it's also like 9 hours away from Virginia Beach. And so you have no idea how big Virginia is until you start going out that way, right?
You got it. Yeah.
But I wanted to basically summarize about where the local elections or the locals maybe doing these resolutions. So first off, the RNC engaged, which is great. We're glad to see that the RNC finally engaged in Virginia. They financed and funded this fight, but they filed it in Tazewell, which was quite predictable what the judge was going to do out there because he already ruled that the constitutional amendment was passed unconstitutionally. So you're asking a judge to basically rule again, and he ruled for this, and I'm glad that they did. I'm thankful that they did. You've asked the same judge the same question. And I think that's important just to understand that the Supreme Court of Virginia has already expressed a lack of appetite for intervening in this election. Mm-hmm. Can you hear me okay? It says it's reconnecting on my side.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Just keep going. Yep. Or did it drop? Well, doggone it. This is the tough thing. And I know what this is like because when I was running for office and I was spending every day driving, you'd be in the middle of a major phone call with a donor or somebody who had something important to tell you, and you'd hit these spaces in Virginia. It's weird to me in 2026 that there's still large swaths of the state where the cell service is pretty rough. It just, we're trying to carry audio and video and it drops out. And that's the danger. I did want to talk to Tim because I think he's, knee deep in this discussion and isn't beholden to anybody, so he can kind of shoot straight with us without having to. He's already made everybody mad there is to make mad. So those are good people to talk to sometimes because they can tell you exactly what they're thinking. But I think the point that Tim was making, maybe we'll reconnect with him here in a second, producer Dan, is that going to Tazewell and having the same judge engage with the same impression that is already on the record cuts both ways. Yes, you now have an injunction, but do we think that injunction will survive today? Do we think that the I mean, the Democrats clearly are not going to just sit by and allow this to disappear in front of their faces. As I pointed out, I think a lot of this is not motivated locally, but is motivated from Washington, D.C. And the real appetite that the Democrats have as they count the numbers. I mean, it's razor thin in the House of Representatives right now as they count the numbers and they look at where they could be at the end of this election this November. They're looking at a potential overwhelming majority in the House, and they have clearly offered some sort of incentive. I would love to know this, what they have done to try to win over Speaker Don Scott, the ex-drug dealer who's the Speaker of the House of Delegates, shockingly. I mean, how Virginia has fallen. And don't get me wrong, it's not because he's black. I mean, look, you put a drug dealer in, a guy who spent time in federal prison for drug dealing is now the Speaker of the House. Unbelievable to me. But what incentive has been offered to get someone like him and Louise Lucas and her collection of thugs down in Portsmouth to buy into this? What's the deal? There's bound to be some sort of deal here. It's not just a magnanimous, hey, we're all on the same team kind of thing. So I think maybe we've got Tim back. Tim, can you hear me? Are you there? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not hearing Tim. So I hate that we're having these problems.
Yes, sorry about this. It's I think he is trying to reconnect, and he obviously is driving through a part of the state that is not conducive.
Yeah, if you're going out to Tazewell, it's a tough thing. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just finish this up and then we'll take another break. But
absolutely.
And maybe we'll get Tim before the program is over. I am waiting to see, though. I think this is what Tim was alluding to. You go to the same courthouse, you go to the same judge, you get a similar ruling. You did get an injunction this time, which you didn't get last time, that at least temporarily stays the voting. Now, I would tell you, if you're a Republican watching this program, I wouldn't pause for a second in my effort to communicate to my friends and neighbors and family why this proposal by the Democrats is such a bad idea. And may I sum it up for you? We've already shared with you kind of the corrupt way this is being presented to the public. The rules have not been obeyed. The timing, that Republicans didn't pick this, Democrats picked this. The law says you have to do certain things in a certain sequence so that the public in the Commonwealth of Virginia is aware of what is happening in a reasonable amount of time to make reasonable decisions. They didn't even initiate this proposal for stripping the state constitution of the protection against gerrymandering until after 1 million people had already voted in the last election. So there's been about 6 or 7 months here where Democrats have basically flipped their middle finger right in the face of every law that controls the elections of Virginia, and no one seems capable of holding them accountable for it. Then, from a practical standpoint, let me tell you, I know lots of people that don't like Donald Trump. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you about that. You don't like Donald Trump personally? Okay, we don't have to talk about Donald Trump. When it comes to policy, I'm on board with these policies. I think he's doing the right thing. I think we're swallowing some very unpleasant medicine because we haven't been disciplined in the years leading up to this. Democrats have flooded the zone with illegal immigrants. So if you want to actually enforce the law, and they're fair laws that have been on the books for decades, not something new that's contrived, just to score political points. Now, these are old laws that are finally being enforced. It's not going to be pleasant. Just like when we finally decide that we're going to deal with the deficit and the debt, it's not going to be pleasant. Somebody's going to be very unhappy. And I suspect they're going to balance that on the backs of old people, which is awful, but that's probably what's going to happen. When you don't enforce the law, when you're not responsible, you wind up paying a cost in the long run. And I think that is what's happening with President Trump and this administration. And he has taken the beating for it. So you may not like Donald Trump, but Virginia set a standard that the rest of the nation should probably pay attention to. It's not my job as a Virginian, whether I'm in elected office or whether I'm just a political commentator. It's not my job to tell Texas what to do. Not my job to tell Tennessee what to do, or South Carolina, or any of the other states. I mean, I'm going to be critical. Like, I'm very critical of the decisions that have been made in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Illinois. They've screwed up their own states. That's why so many people are leaving those places and moving to Florida. Up until recently, they had been moving to Virginia, moving their businesses to Virginia. Now you've got situations like Boeing leaving. So I think we're going to see an exodus from Virginia with the new tax mindset of the Democrats here. But it's not my place to micromanage other states. I'll comment about it, but that's your business. I don't live there. And, I'm not a big businessman. I don't have tons of business in these other states. You do what you got to do in your state. But in Virginia, we set a standard where we said, Republicans and Democrats alike, we are tired of the hyper-partisan political gerrymandering. We don't think that the politicians who are in office today are the people who should be drawing the lines for their own districts. Now, let's be honest. The courts have already, another abdication of their responsibility. They don't give a damn about the lines. Ghazala Hashmi wouldn't be lieutenant governor, wouldn't have been in the state Senate had we actually enforced the law, because she lied and was deceptive about where she was living when she ran for re-election to the Senate. The court said, we don't care. Doesn't matter. All right. If you can just go and rent a little apartment and drop your keys there one night a week and claim that that's your household, okay. I mean, I see how it is. I'm glad to know that we're not going to obey the law anymore. You just have to kind of pretend, and especially if you're Democrat, you'll get away with breaking the law. Now I'm on right. Thank you for letting me know that that's the way things are going to run now. That will be very instructive going forward. I personally choose to obey the law, but I won't worry about it because I know I know the courts have no intention of enforcing it, and I know the courts are biased and bigoted, and they're going to side with the Democrats. All right, good. Thank you for letting me know. Now I'll just kind of recalibrate my thinking as I deal with all of you all. But the people of Virginia, I think, still want to have a responsible government. I think the people of Virginia still want to have a law and order society. They don't want riots in the streets. They don't want buildings set on fire. They don't want monuments pulled down because the mob decided they didn't like them. Maybe they'll vote to take them down, but they don't want this chaos that has emerged. And the courts and the Democrats, working hand in hand, seem to be facilitating that. And we made a decision with 65% of the voters of Virginia saying, let's not just pass a law that changes the way we draw these districts, but let's put it in our state constitution. Let's try, because this is such a polarized time and because we're not going to agree on all of these issues, and there is a lot of power on the line, let's be responsible people and try to take this away from the at least active politicians and try to have people who are as neutral as you can find. And that's almost impossible, I concede, but let's try to find some people who will be objective. We'll have a couple of key ways of deciding whether something's objective. We'll have compact geographical areas of common interest, and we'll draw lines that will be fair for everybody. How about that? We'll try, at least at the first step, to do something that's fair. And we all agreed to it. And it was only 5 years ago. And now the Democrats, because they are in charge, have revealed their true intentions. It is not to be fair. It is to grab power. It is to take power. It is to disenfranchise and silence anyone in the state who doesn't agree with them. They already have the majority. 6 Democrat seats, 5 House seats, for 6 Democrat seats, 5 Republican House seats. I mean, they already have the majority. And when you look at the numbers of people who vote in these key elections in Virginia, when everybody has an opportunity to go and presumably they're informed, it does seem to match just snapshot what the people of Virginia are thinking at this moment. And when the next census happens, we'll see if there's a mindset shift in Virginia. I don't know whether that's going to happen. But we made a responsible decision to agree that we're going to do these things every decade based on the census, and that we're going to have people who are at least not directly impacted by the lines, drawing the lines. What we have been presented with is a series of maps for the different districts that are anchored in Northern Virginia, where it's as Democrat as you can possibly get. And it's very, very highly populated. So what an insult it is to even Democrats who live in the Hampton Roads area to have their district stretch all the way to a population center in Northern Virginia. How offensive is it? I mean, are you all that monolithic about the federal government issues that you're going to prevent people in Hampton Roads from effectively having a congressperson who will represent them and their best interest in Washington, who will go to Washington and say these programs and this money and these initiatives will help solve the problems in this community? Or is everything going to be anchored towards what's in the best interest of Northern Virginia, not because it's Northern Virginia, but because it's a Democrat stronghold? I think that's a problem. Objectively, I think that's a problem. And I think I'm intellectually honest enough that I would say the same thing if it was a Republican proposal to stretch out these districts so that there's no common interest. What do you think? The people in Chesapeake have anything in common with the people in Arlington other than they live in the same state on a map? They're very different mindsets. They're very different issues. And the Democrats have thrown all that out because they're catering to the Trump haters in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. And there's got to be some payoff for what they're doing. And they're ripping up the state constitution that the people of Virginia made a decision to amend just a few years ago in order to achieve their goals. And so I don't know what the courts are finally going to do here. And I am preparing to go vote on March the 6th. That's what I'm preparing to do, because I will be damned if I'm going to let the state be completely taken over in this type of crass way that silences the voices of my neighbors, even the ones that I might not agree with. And that's the difference between a Republican like me and a Democrat like the people that we've sent to the Capitol. I admit we don't agree on everything. Totally fine. I've lived my whole life. Think of me, a gay Republican. You think my life has been easy? I've had to navigate weird, really uncomfortable situations with people on both sides of the political spectrum my entire life. So this is not new to me. I don't know what kind of world some of these people have lived in where they just get their way. I never get my way. I have to navigate everything and try to really be the kind of person who can offer an argument to win people to my side, which seems to be pretty American if you're capable of doing that. That's what I'm trying to do. This is a crass, offensive power grab that stomps on the views of other people in the state. And I'm against it. And I would be against it if my own party was doing it. Because we made an agreement. And now the agreement is being torn up by the Democrats in Virginia. And so I don't know what the courts are going to do, but the people should not accept this. We'll take another break. Be back in a moment here on the Reid Revolution.
son. He was never going to be king. He's, Prince Harry, but older, and he was always arrogant throughout his life. He treated his staff. There's lots of stories about how badly he treated his valets and his staff and everything, like they were scum. And he was the Queen's favorite, so he was utterly spoiled. He's totally entitled, and he wandered around, flexing the I'm a royal prince muscle. And from that point of view, it comes as no surprise that he would do that.
Back on the Reid Revolution as we head towards the weekend, I'm John Reid, and it's time to talk to my international expert, Hugh Shakeshaft, who's lived all around the world, doesn't just repeat things that he's read in books. He's actually lived them. And one day somebody's going to write the book about you, Hugh. And maybe, they'll hire a dashing gentleman to play you in the movie version of the book too. We don't have time for all the crazy stories. That was the great thing when I was down in Florida. I could just sit there. Most of the time I do the talking, but when I'm around you, you've got so many great stories. It's, you could fill an hour easy.
Yeah, it's I either have an on or an off switch, John. There is no kind of like sliding scale.
Well, I thought of you when I saw that the former Prince Andrew had been arrested. And,
why you thought I was a jailbird?
No. But I mean, what is going on? I don't know what's true and what's not true. Clearly, there was some sort of relationship between Andrew and Epstein, and everybody seems to be dumping on him, including his own brother, the king. So I've got to believe there's something really nefarious there. What's the deal, you think?
I think he was very heavily involved with Jeffrey Epstein. I think, Andrew is a fool, an arrogant, exceptional fool. He's the second son. He was never going to be king. He's, Prince Harry, but older, and he was always arrogant throughout his life. He treated his staff. There's lots of stories about how badly he treated his valets and his staff and everything, like they were scum. And, he was the Queen's favorite. So he was utterly spoiled. He's totally entitled. And he wandered around, flexing the I'm a royal prince muscle. And from that point of view, it comes as no surprise that he would do that. You got to remember that Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, liked to go to clubs where the Cray twins, who were the gangsters of London at the time, were. There's always that, shall we say, relationship between the great and the good. To be around, surrounded by people who were frankly not the right sort, the wrong side of the tracks. You see it in America as well. So Andrew was brought up massively privileged, arrogant as hell, pain in the backside, basically. I mean, I met him the first time. It was quite funny. I arrived. He was on as a trade envoy, international trade envoy in Malaysia, and at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in the middle of Kuala Lumpur. He pulled up right just ahead of us. Right, I didn't realize he'd pulled in with his two police motorcycle outriders and the big SUV with the royal standard on flag on the front. I followed him in with three police motorcycle outriders, lights and sirens, the whole thing. Got out of the car with His Excellency Milan Lajcek, the ambassador. And Andrew looked at me and I said, "Oh, good evening, Your Royal Highness." And he went, "You're English?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Oh," looked at my two bikes, his two bikes, looked at my three bikes with their lights still going, and just turned and stormed off. And then afterwards, I found out it was because I had three bikes and he only had two.
And he took note of that.
Yeah, particularly as I was English. So it was like he was the most important Englishman in that hemisphere at that point, as far as he was concerned. So yeah, it's tiny little things like that. He's petulant, and undoubtedly he will have. There is a lot there with him and Epstein. Don't know on the sexual side, but it's very, very interesting. I always believed that he was going to be the scapegoat for everybody else, because if you can nail a royal, great. Billionaires just disappear into the background. Seems strange that no billionaire has been arrested, interviewed, or anything on any of this. And Andrew, and it's difficult to feel sorry for him because if he's done it, the sexual improprieties and everything else, it's then he should be punished, right? But the
I mean,
bottom line
they're different levels or different on the spectrum of sexual impropriety. Cheating on your spouse is one of them, but what we're talking about, or at least what's being floated out there, is abuse of kids. I mean, I don't know what I'm looking at. Yesterday, one thing that was very disturbing to me was a photo of Andrew sitting on a floor in what looked like a nice apartment or house, playing with a ball with a kid. I don't know how old the kid was, 2, 3 years old, maybe. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Am I looking at an innocent photo of a guy playing on the floor with a little kid, or is this something nefarious? And it's presented as if we're seeing something that's really horrific, and I don't know what I'm looking at.
I mean, I find that difficult to believe.
Me too.
I mean, that's like 0.0001 of 1% of the population would do that, and I can't.
And let someone take a photo of it too, if that was the case.
Exactly.
Good grief! What are you talking about?
I mean, that means that every person who plays with either their own children or their grandchildren or anything is party to. This is becoming Salem witch hunt territory.
You're right. What I mean? You're right.
And not everybody in the Epstein files was guilty of anything sexual, any impropriety in that way. I mean, you look at it and you say, okay, what they're guilty of is always wanting to make money with somebody who makes money, and they're turning a blind eye to his previous conviction. That is a judgment call, right? And let's say at best it's a supreme lack of judgment. But with Andrew, it's interesting. There are people in the UK who want to get rid of the monarchy.
The monarchy, yes.
Republican UK, right? Now, it's interesting. They tried over Diana. They thought they could bring down the royal family over Diana, and failed miserably. And the Queen learned and came back much, much stronger. I don't think this will bring down the royal family. I think that's hyperbole and nonsense. But it's interesting to note that the Republicans in the UK, or Republican, or whatever they call themselves, to me, they're just a minority of, another loud, noisy minority. But it was them that reported him to the police over potential sex trafficking. But more importantly, the easiest one to get him on is misconduct in public life, which does include the sex stuff. But more importantly is the fact that he disseminated confidential trade files to Jeffrey Epstein, which is a huge no-no. This also lays the groundwork then for them to investigate Lord Mandelson, or the former Lord Mandelson, who was ambassador to the US, set up by Starmer. So there's a lot of dark elements at work here. One, can you bring down the royal family? And as I said to some people yesterday, look, Charles is very, very hardworking and understands the sense of duty and is woke. His son is lazy and even more woke. However,
who, William?
Yeah, and there are things I can disclose which I don't want to, which will make him look very, very bad. And to me, they are appalling, and they are verifiable through the people that you've met, like Dino and everybody else, who know that system and who know it. They've been commanding officers of regiments where he's supposed
But William's so popular, supposedly. Is
that
true?
Supposedly, but he's very, very woke. He should not be talking about your gun laws. That has nothing to do with it.
Well,
and this is where
I like watching the royal family, but I'm not interested in anybody's opinions on our laws in the United States.
Well, absolutely. I made it. But protocol used to be that you don't do that. Mm-hmm. The king remains apolitical. You never heard the Queen utter a political statement. And let's be clear, she had people like Xi foisted on her, Mugabe from Zimbabwe foisted on her, state visits, because it suited the political climate at the time for the government and the prime minister. So, but she never uttered these things. And quite frankly, I'm going to be honest, and I always say it tongue in cheek, but it's true. The brains of the firm are Camilla and Princess Catherine, right?
Really? Yeah.
If those two, if Prince William and the King are going to do anything stupid that's likely to jeopardize the royal family, they will rein them straight in, because neither of those two ladies is going back to being a commoner. Right. And also,
they've got a real vested interest.
Catherine hasn't suffered this much, right, to have 3 children and then not have her eldest son be king. That is never not going to happen. He is going to be king come what may. And if his grandmother on Catherine's side, Catherine's mother's still alive, trust me, that's happening. You know?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
I that's one of the reasons I enjoy having this conversation with you, is that you seem to have that inside perspective from somebody who's observed a lot of these people up close in the private clubs in London, like when we went to the coronation and we met up and you kind of bounced around your own wedding there. You know, it's just interesting to hear that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's and you know, people tend to keep things close to their chest, but with William, there is a certain level of frustration. Because they're very, very concerned. You know, you got to remember that it's not only the royal family that are traditional, there's an entire echelon of society that maintains the traditions of the nation. And just because it's tradition doesn't mean it's bad. And I think that, you know, one of the things is over here, you're seeing it here, you know, it's very politically, you know, divided here. And there is no central ground or central person who both sides can be drawn to, and that was always the Queen. When there was, you know, discomfort, shall we say, with certain aspects of life, then everybody was always drawn to the monarch. It was the one stable, rooted thing about England that was always going to be there, always could be relied on. It's that, you know, thousands of years of heritage and history. And one of our problems is that there are certain aspects of our society now, mainly not original indigenous populations, so we say, who would like to destroy that. And, you know, we've got a London mayor who would love more than nothing to get rid of the monarch. And we have Starmer, who's a member of the Fabian Society, whose logo is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they were created in 1880 with a view to, you know, making cultural Marxism the global dominant political doctrine. And nothing has changed, which is why you see Starmer making these decisions, you know, to decolonize
he's
our
horrible.
entire history. He's a foul individual. He's a guy that, you know, and as you know, I've got personal experience of him up close, and and up closer to his actions as well. He's a man who was clearly an outlier at school, bullied, not a popular boy, and his revenge is to get to the top by any means necessary, and to petulantly behave. You know, I mean, I describe Mark Carney in Canada as a petulant little boy. You know, he's stamping his foot over Trump because Trump doesn't do what he says. You know, I used to brief against him in Parliament, and Carney's just, you know, horrible, another despicable person in the Starmer mold. And it appears that those type of people now have broken cover. They have no fear of retribution for whatever they do. It's almost like they're protected from on high. And I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories of the Illuminati and the globalists and the WEF and all the rest of it. But, you know, that's what you see. So when it comes to the
There's
monarchy,
something weird going on, though, Hugh. I mean, it's one thing if you live and you're pushing a narrative or a philosophy, economic philosophy or cultural philosophy that isn't cratering right in front of your face. But how can anyone look at what is happening in Europe in particular right now um, on the streets. I mean, the economy is a different story, but on the streets culturally, and not recognize that this globalist mindset and this diversity push is backfiring in a very dramatic way. And they're not acknowledging it, and they won't change.
Well, they won't, because, I mean, it was very interesting. You remember Angela Merkel? Her
Germany,
father went
yeah.
east, took her east from West Germany into East Germany. She became a member of the Communist Party, everything else. And what was very, very interesting is that if you watch any photos of her or film of her when the national anthem of Germany was being played once they united, she never looks at the flag, which I find extraordinary. And she hated it. She was a communist at heart. If you noticed, anytime Putin did anything, she went silent, because they knew each other when he was running the KGB in East Germany, and she was a high-ranking party member. And they knew each other. So you see this whole aspect of this globalist need. I mean, there was something written at the same time as Hitler was writing Mein Kampf. Andrew Coudenhove Kalergi wrote a piece that became the doctrine of the European movement in 1950, when Spinelli and Monet created the first iron and steel trades association in Europe, which was mainly to keep Germany's warlike issues under. If you controlled coal and steel, they couldn't rearm. But it was more geared towards, from day one, a political union. And in it, Kalergi in the 20s, and he hated Hitler, and Hitler hated him. He was half Japanese, half Austrian. But he wrote about that the only way to stop the warring nations of the Northern Europe was to allow mass immigration from the south and breed out the natives, the indigenous population, because a mixed population and a diverse population, to use today's words, would actually mean that there would be less nationalism, because nobody would have such a
sense of pride and connection
pride
to the
and nationalism and admiration and patriotism for their country. They would be easier to control, and you would be able to do it. And he even states that by doing this, that the new Europeans would have a look of maybe of Egyptians. And you can go and read this whole thing up. And people go, oh, it's a conspiracy theory if you think we're doing that. Well, it's happening in front of our very eyes.
Oh, it's listen, maybe it was. I think it's interesting that that historic footnote is important to be aware of, because people don't believe it. But it's happening right in front of our face. And now they're bragging about it, Hugh. I mean, it's
I know.
10 years ago they were being quiet, but not now.
Yeah. Go read up on the Kalergi plan. It's spelled Kalergi.
Okay.
Kalergi.
Interesting.
All right.
I always get a homework assignment here.
Yeah, indeed. And I shall expect you all to come back tomorrow and tell me what you read. But the Kalergi plan, right, is and when you go on Wikipedia, they rave about it. Do you know what I mean? And I mean,
yeah.
You look up, did Trump ever, go visit the island? Because you're hearing he's a pedo and he visited the island and everything else. All I will say is that when you go on Google, and even on their AI mode, which is written by left-wingers, it states clearly there is no evidence that he ever visited the island.
Right.
And the whole thing is, people may have gone on his plane, they may not have. He used it for charity, but you're never going to get to the bottom of it, because at the moment, the lightning rod for all of this is Andrew. And Prince Andrew is the easiest target with the least fallout. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can have fallout in the UK, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Mandelson is going to get crucified because of the fact that he was never, ever popular, even in the Labour Party. They hated him. I mean, Tony Blair, before he got elected in 1997 in the landslide, said, my greatest achievement in the party will be getting the party to like Mandelson. And he never did.
Well, before I run out of time, let me switch to Iran. You spent a lot of time in and out of the Middle East. Had you ever been to Iran?
No.
Not
that old. Although my
Well, I didn't.
business
Yeah.
partner, one of my business partner's father, was the Shah of Iran's finance minister. So yeah, I have a little insight on that.
So look, I was at the Pentagon the other day, and I kept expecting my meeting to be canceled because it was very clear that a lot of assets were moving into the region, and I think everybody's watching to see whether Trump is going to take action against Iran with the nuclear program apparently restarting. And let's be honest, this may be the opportunity to collapse that horrific regime. And they're slaughtering people every day that goes by. It seems like they're slaughtering more people. No one seems to care. There's nobody marching in the streets in New York or Washington or here in Richmond. They don't care. They want to stand up for Hamas, and they'll block all the roads in America about Hamas, but they won't stand up for the freedom-loving people of Iran. That's atrocious to me. But
I mean, when you put it that way, it's basically: are you a terrorist supporter? Yes.
Yeah,
are you a democracy supporter? No.
Right.
That's that's as brutal as it gets. I mean, with Iran, let's be clear: they have never ever acted in good faith. Fakia is a word that they use in Arabic, which is that it's okay to lie to the infidel as long as it furthers Islam. I think that they are the walking epitome of that. They have never ever acted graciously or in good faith or agreed without changing everything. You saw them, they're playing America around now. They're buying time continually. Lavrov has come out, that lunatic foreign minister for Putin, who's always pugnacious, come out and said, there'd be grave, issues for America if they did anything. Well, nothing happened after they bombed the bunkers. So let's be clear. They're a paper tiger. They can't even beat Ukraine. Okay, but they are a nuclear power. But there is an attitude in Russia, though, that we need to be aware of, which is the reason they can get 40 million people to die in a war, 20 million soldiers in the Second World War, was because they love Russian soil. It is magic soil to them, and it is the motherland. And as I said to you before, they have a saying there. We have a saying: pride comes before a fall. Theirs is: if you don't have pride, you will fall. No, they will fight. And they have also an attitude which says, what is the world without Russia? And it's nothing. So if there is no Russia, there will be no world. So with nuclear weapons, you can understand that attitude may well be an issue.
Yes, right.
And it's that I'll bite your nose off to spite your face. Whether they would go that far, I don't know. But Putin is a foul and disgusting man who should have been removed from power years and years ago. However, people behind him are worse. And you don't know what you're going to get. It's rather like removing Saddam Hussein. And so we're in a situation where, to be honest, you've got to work with Putin, believe it or not, because you've got to get him away from China.
Because that coalition is very powerful.
It's very powerful, and China will turn on him. However, it was the conduct in the last 5 years by the Biden regime that actually pushed Putin into China's arms.
Yeah. They did not play those cards right at all.
Yeah, they didn't know which way they wanted to turn. And so all they did was dither and dally and half stuff. And I'm no advocate for war, as you know. And even Putin said it would not have happened if Trump had still been there. So that tells you enough. But coming back to Iran, I don't know how you deal with that, because there is no viable opposition. And Reza, the Shah's son, is no leader. Rather like the lady in Venezuela right now is not the answer. She may well be later, but doesn't have the ability to prevent civil war. Reza, again, is, he would go back.
He's been working the networks in Washington for years. I've been to events and they point him out over in the, at the table, like, there's the Shah's son. He's going to be the ruler of Iran when things change there. That was years ago.
the country's moved on from that. I think it would like to be a republic, a democratic republic. But how far down? Again, like Venezuela, bearing in mind it's much more than Chavez is coming in. That say 20 years. You've got it since 1979. They've removed all opposition. They're removing all opposition now.
Now they're slaughtering people. That's one reason. Like, if Trump's going to do something, why is he waiting? You think? What's the holdup?
You've got, I think he's got to have tried to exhaust all diplomatic channels. One of them is get them to the table over this. However, brook no stupidity, no childish maneuvering. No, they can't be in the room. They can. Moving the venue, all of that. It's time now to say enough already. And if you don't believe us, here, have some more of this, because he has proved that he will do it.
Yeah, I think he needs to do it.
How do you get?
He's letting the people who might be able to stand up and fix the country are being murdered right now.
Yeah, well, they're not in the country, and one of the things is that I have a double-edged sword on taking high-quality people from third world countries, and allowing them to come in here and in the UK and everywhere else to enhance the economy, because they want all of the material benefits very, very quickly that match their skill set. They can't have it in their own country. They've got to build it, and they can't build it under certain regimes. The regime falls. They don't go back because they've now got a comfortable life. They're enjoying it. They've got all the material things that they want. They've got a lifestyle that they want. They can have it again back in their own country, but they've got to go back and build it.
Mm-hmm.
As the years go by, I'm less inclined to go and build something now, John, at 67. It just isn't going to happen. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to go somewhere and get down and
start over again.
Yeah, and start over again. So, I understand that. So what we do is we end up promoting a brain drain with the view that they would go back, and then they don't. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword on that one, which leaves countries bereft of talent.
Well, that and political murder will do that to you.
And that removes everything. And you've got a situation like in Venezuela and Iran where they denounce their neighbors.
Yes.
For self-preservation. And everybody's a secret policeman. And everybody's that. Now, how far, if you don't have a controlled exchange, rather like they've done in Venezuela, and so far, fair play, that's worked. Because if you remove the entire upper echelon, you have the Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
At which point you have civil war, you have everybody denouncing one another, murdering one another, and everybody settling old scores.
Yeah.
In South Africa, they had the, the reconciliation went on, but there was still murder and mayhem, but not like you've had in Iraq and everywhere else. So we've seen and hopefully learned from removing the entire upper echelon. So what do? Do you remove the top of the Republican Guard, but leave the Republican Guard there? Everybody's got blood on their hands. Everybody. So you can't groom someone to take over who's got blood on their hands. That's why Saddam Hussein was so clever. He made every single cabinet member go down into the basement and shoot someone. So they all were murderers. So you could never groom a murderer, therefore, to take over from.
Well, it's a mess. And the one thing that I'll say, and you have some years on me and some observational perspective that perhaps I don't have, but I'll tell you, I mean, here, Trump gives Iran 10 to 15-day deadline to strike a deal. I think that 10 to 15 days is going to be a deadly 10 to 15 days. And then what are we left with? We're left with chaos in Iran. I mean, they are the worst players on the international scene.
Khamenei's already moved. They moved him when they bombed the he went underground.
Right. The first time.
You're going to find him again in a little hole somewhere. But you've got to have boots on the ground to do that.
Yeah.
And what's the chances of a well-armed uprising? It's pretty slim.
Pretty slim, especially now. You get 2 months of everybody being murdered. What are you supposed to do? I mean, I just feel like this one, has been misplayed, and the end result could have been better than if you're going to take action. If you know you're going to take action, go ahead and do it instead of running out the clock and giving your opponent extra time. Now, in all fairness, Trump has played his cards very well, and he's got a team that he seems to, once he pulls the trigger, he steps back and lets them do what the military needs to do in order to accomplish the mission objective without the lawyers being involved in it and second guessing everything. I think that's a positive thing. But I'm like, if you know this is where this is gonna go, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
don't wait.
I mean, it's the trouble is, as I said, the mayhem and the ability to kill masses of people in a flick of a switch. I mean, I think, if you're gonna look at it, I'm always reminded about at the end of the First World War, which was a meat grinder, which is the same as going on in Ukraine right now. And just as an aside, Ukraine has the population of the UK had at the time of the First World War right now, and it's lost more men than we did in the First World War. That's how much of a meat grinder that is, and yet it's not being said. And everybody, all our armchair people, we got to fight. We got not 1 inch of their territory. Well, send your son over there, mate, and see when he comes back in a body bag how you feel about that. But coming back to the First World War and the meat grinder that was, Clemenceau was stated at the end of the war that it's clear that war was far too important a thing to be left to the generals. And A.J.P. Taylor, the very famous historian, countered with, history has shown that it's far too important a thing to be left to statesmen. Where do we go from there? I mean, because that is as true today as it was then, because of political interference and everything else, half measures and doing it. Iran,
we'll watch over
Iran
the next.
Is a very tough one because you can only go so far with bombs, missiles, and everything else.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we've got a week to 2 weeks where they'll talk, and inevitably, I don't think that's going to be a breakthrough, but we'll keep talking.
They will just keep talking. They will talk you out. One of the things they want to do is talk their way out of the Trump administration.
I think there are a bunch of different people who want to do that. They're watching the clock.
They'll
like 3 years, it'll go by faster than you think if we can just avoid a conflict. Yeah. All right. Look, I when I was visiting with you, you were on the phone all the time talking about this Winston Churchill Memorial, and this is at the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been appointed, and I'm going to be running it over here. I've been appointed to the Winston Churchill D-Day Memorial Fund, Trust, whatever you want to call it, because the name's still just being finalized now. What it is we're raising funds for a twice life-size statue of Sir Winston saluting, looking out. It's at the Normandy Memorial for the Allied, the Commonwealth and British troops, looking out over the beaches, saluting. And there will also be an education centre there, so that what D-Day was about, what D-Day and the Battle of Normandy was about, and all the way to Berlin, and what we were talking about. Remember that quaint old thing when we were actually fighting real fascists?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the education centre will be there, but it's a huge honour to be asked to lead this. I've got Jenny Churchill, Winston's great-granddaughter, coming to stay with us, John, next week, in the same suite that you use, sir. Right?
She'll stay in the Moroccan room.
No, you were in the Moroccan room. No,
I was in the Moroccan room.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah, no, she'll be in the Terry Mills suite.
Oh, yes. Okay.
God rest his soul. But basically, what we're doing is that, and also there's going to be a wall there that will commemorate the 22,000, nearly 500 British and Commonwealth troops who died not only on the beaches but in the Battle of Normandy.
I'm surprised there's not a Churchill statue there now.
So was I, to be honest. But like most things, it's all about donations and raising money, and his reach around the world is extraordinary. And from that point of view, the wall will name every single British and Commonwealth soldier who died on the beaches and in the Battle of Normandy, including 14 Americans who were commemorated nowhere other than their gravestone, who joined the Canadian forces and then were transferred to the British military units and fought and died for us. So that's the tie with America, as well as the Omaha Beach memorial. But that, 14 brave Americans signed up early, and there were many more who survived.
It's a remarkable place to visit, and it's very moving, and you realize all the people who gave up their lives to provide us with the opportunity to live in the society we do today. And I hope that when you are sitting there eating a hamburger, watching Netflix, throwing your hands up saying, oh, this society is so screwed up, think about all the sacrifices that were made to give you this chance to save society now without losing your life. And I applaud that. Do you all have a website yet if people are interested?
We're setting all of that up. What we're going to do is I'll make an announcement, because there's a major announcement coming over a potential car, which we can't discuss at the moment, John. But because with the Churchill name, everything that you do has to be vetted and cleared, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
You know me, John. I try not to be vulgar, and I certainly wouldn't want to do anything vulgar surrounding Sir Winston's legacy.
All right. Well, we will respect that, and we'll have you on when you have the next big announcement to make. Hugh Shakestaff, Transatlantica is his company, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you, Hugh.
Thanks, John. Have a great day.
Best to Deborah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're back with more on the Reid Revolution in just a moment. Hope you'll stay with us. So now the U.S. Supreme Court has thrown everything into turmoil with the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, and it's an interesting ruling and bound to cause a lot of chaos. Seems unnecessary, but we will be discussing that, I'm sure, as we head into next week. Right now, I want to welcome a city council person from Lynchburg, Virginia. Marty Misjuns is somebody I've encountered a lot on the campaign trail. He is with us this morning to talk about two issues. Let's talk about the first one related to the referendum that's supposed to start on March 6th, but at the moment is paused because of a ruling in Botetourt County that would redistrict the congressional seats in Virginia. There's this idea, Marty, that the different city councils and the boards of supervisors all across the state could weigh in on this themselves and say, hey, we're not going to participate in something that's illegal. What's your take on it?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty simple. We take an oath of office, and good to see you, John. Thanks for having me on.
Glad you're here.
And glad to be here. We take an oath of office when we get sworn in, right? And it's hand on the Bible, right hand up in the air. And it's to uphold and support both the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's a covenant between me and my creator, between me and myself, me and my peers on the council, and then also with my constituents. The Constitution is very, very clear. We are not allowed to present a question to the voters until it's been 90 days since that joint resolution was passed. So with that in mind, what we've got to do is we've got to look at all of the tools that we have available to us to make sure that in the city of Lynchburg, we're honoring that. So what tools are available? Well, Lynchburg City Council, we control the purse, we control the city real estate. And what we're looking at doing is we're going to get some legal advice on Monday. We've got a special meeting scheduled, and we're looking at adopting a resolution that would prevent local funds from being used for presenting that question to the voters this early, because March 6th January 16th, what is that? 42 days, I think, 42, 43 days. It's not 90 days.
Certainly not 90. Yeah. And
So,
it's interesting that no one else seems to read the law with a strict interpretation of what it says is what it says, and whether you like it or not is a separate question, but you've got to obey the law. And quite frankly, Democrats wrote these laws. So I'm
that's right.
puzzled why it's falling to you all to try to deal with it. You know, the criticism I heard last night, Marty, was that that this would potentially disenfranchise voters in Lynchburg, who I would assume are probably largely against this redistricting effort.
Absolutely.
How do you respond to that? What do you think?
You know, I hear that side of the argument, but at the end of the day, we've got to uphold our oath of office. When it comes to the Code of Virginia, when it comes to the laws, the Constitution is supreme. That is the document that we have to honor above all else, right? And I understand what the code says about the 45 days, but right now we're in conflict with what the Constitution says about that question being presented to the voters.
Yeah.
And I can't, in good conscience, not weigh these options and look at what we can do. And quite frankly, if a court directs us to proceed, then that's fine. And, you know, if we were to start the election on April 16th and have 45 days of early voting, that's also fine. Right. But there are guardrails in place in our Constitution for these processes to prevent these things from being just thrown to voters with limited education. And, you know, when you've got the language that they have in that referendum saying that, you know, you want to vote for fair maps,
right?
But those fair maps give, you know, 70% of the Commonwealth is going to be represented out of Arlington or Fairfax County.
Right.
You know,
whose
that's why that
definition of
90 days
fair?
is there, so voters can be educated on what that really means.
I mean, it's very clear that the Democrats have made a conscious decision. They're just going to jam this through. They want to force the issue before the November elections. The calendar's not working in their favor. And a reasonable person who wants to obey the law would say, hey, I'd really like to do this, but we've run out of time. We just didn't, you know, the calendar doesn't work, and it's not going to be, we can't execute on it. And I'm just puzzled. You know, when you concede that Republicans are trying to win, Democrats are trying to win, I'm just puzzled by this mindset in Virginia that the rules apparently don't apply to Democrats. Where has that come from, and who is going to be able to stand up and say, "We get it, but you've got to obey the same rules we have to obey"?
And I think that's where all the local governing bodies need to come in and take a look at this and really examine what's their responsibility here. What is our responsibility to our oath of office, to the taxpayers that we serve, right? To honor that and say, you know what? The Virginia Supreme Court needs to decide whether or not this is legitimate. 90 days. That's what it says in the Constitution. So based on that, I think that we need to force them to answer that question. This is not a time for waiting to find out. Right. Oh, let's just have the election and then find out if it's legal after we do it.
On the other end, after you've blown through money and everybody has
absolutely
cast a vote, I agree with you. I think it's really reckless on the part of the state Supreme Court. It's kind of shocking to me that that's their mindset. It's also shocking to me that they don't seem to be able to read, and the mindset of all of these people who I would expect more from, with the acknowledgement that it's a partisan battle here. You have to have people who are able to step out of their partisanship and say, you know, I'm going to be an umpire, I'm going to be a referee, and I'm going to judge this fairly based on what's presented in front of me. And that's slipping away from us in Virginia, and it has been for the last 5 or 6 years. And I can cite a number of high-profile cases where it's not just that they went against what I believe, it's that the law says one thing, and it's pretty clear what the law says, and there seems to be this mindset of, we're just going to change that because it accommodates friends of ours, or I'm not on board with it. And I think a lot of Republicans would have that type of spine and that moral compass to make the same decision based on what's written on a piece of paper and agreed to previously, even if it was not something that Republicans wanted.
That's right. I mean, it's pretty clear. You know, we've adapted to the early voting game in Virginia. We but we can't ignore what this language in our Constitution says about amending it.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason, and it's there to protect the people of the Commonwealth
from being ramrodded after one election, which is exactly what's about to happen. Yeah,
and it's there, and we've got to honor that, and it's our job not just to serve our electorate, but also to protect them. And this is a case where we need to step in and do whatever we can do to protect them from what they're trying to do in Richmond.
Well, it's pretty bold, and I'm sure you'll catch hell for it, but I appreciate the fact that you seem to be bold enough to stand up and speak out on this issue.
It's not a time for feckless politicians right now.
You got it, man. Let me ask you about this abortion proposal. You know, Democrats have trumpeted all across the country and all across the Commonwealth of Virginia that they're going to be a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. They're going to be a sanctuary city. You pick the issue. If it's controversial, they seem to think that they can opt out with great fanfare from obeying the law and take a vote in the local city council, and suddenly they don't have to obey the laws that everybody else does. And it's interesting to me, while I don't approve of that mindset, it's interesting to me that there's a movement, especially with the results of the last election, where Democrats will be legalizing abortion, apparently, if we vote on it this November, up until the day the baby's born, maybe even after the baby's born, which is, I mean, the worst murderous laws in the world, right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It is barbaric. That maybe you say, hey, if you guys are bold enough to say this, that you don't have to obey the immigration laws of the United States, then we won't obey the laws that you pass about abortion in our city. How does that play out? Walk me through your mindset on this.
So we didn't do that in Lynchburg, and I think there's just still some things to wait on the other end of that. I know there's some battles at the federal level with the Comstock Act and some other things with that, and we've got to see how that plays out. But what localities do have control of is land use, right? And I dug into our zoning ordinance to discover how the tables work, and I got an education on zoning law that I never knew I needed, and I'm really glad I did, working for the citizens at the local level right now. And what we've done in Lynchburg, and I'm pretty sure that most localities probably do this because it's easy, is we've incorporated the American Planning Association's land-based classification system, which has a bunch of different functions in a table, different functions of types of use of land. And then you take a look at your base zoning districts, your residential districts, your commercial districts, industrial, so forth. And you say what's permitted in those districts by right, which means automatically, or what would require a conditional use permit, right? Based on the function, based on what the use of the land will be.
Right. And that's normal. That's something you do for anybody who applies.
Totally normal.
Okay.
So what I was looking into, because down in Vinton, I believe it was in 2024, I was talking to some folks with Concerned Women for America about it, is an organization, it was either Summit Medical Services or Summit Health Services in Vinton, just moved in. And nobody had any idea that they were an abortion provider. And then all of a sudden, there's a lot of controversy in Vinton because there's now an abortion clinic in Vinton that nobody knew was coming. And I needed to see if that could happen in Lynchburg. So what I discovered was under our outpatient services and family services code, in our zoning code, that's where they were kind of nestled into, if that makes sense, based on the American Planning Association's definition, which allowed them to go by right pretty much all of our business districts, all of our institutional districts. They could just show up anywhere. When I started looking at the map at where these places were, we're talking about parcels right next door to high schools, across the street from churches, next to parks and playgrounds and daycares, and just places you really don't want an abortion clinic, right? So looking at that and talking to the Family Foundation in Richmond, what we figured out was a way to set some zoning parameters on that. And we defined abortion clinics in our zoning code. So you're allowed to do that at the local level. You can customize it. We made a definition for abortion clinics, and then we reduced the number of base zoning districts that they could go into. And now they're only allowed in 3 specific zoning districts. They're required to get a conditional use permit, which means if they come into town, they have to apply, public notice, public hearing, so the citizens get a chance to come and speak for or against. And then city council would actually have to vote whether or not to allow that type of land use to occur. We also set some specific use standards on them to where they can't be within 1,000 feet of churches and schools and playgrounds and daycare centers and children's museums. We completely eliminated our historic districts and our overlay districts downtown, places where we've invested a lot of taxpayer money to revitalize. And the reason is because, I remember when I was a kid, and I know you remember this, the protests and the bombings of abortion clinics was horrific. And, that's not something you want next to schools. That's not something you want in, sensitive areas, churches, things like that. You just don't want that anywhere they want to show up in your city.
Right.
So what we've done is we've severely limited the land where an abortion clinic could operate in the city of Lynchburg. They can still come and apply and try. It would be difficult. It's not an outright ban, but it is a tool. If they're going to put this in the Constitution and make this a constitutional right for people, like you said, up until birth, right? It's a tool localities can use to really regulate where they could show up. And I encourage localities to do that, because we need to look at all the options that we can take, look at all the tools in our toolbox to restrict the ability for this to happen in our cities.
Right. It is a remarkable thing after the last year on the campaign trail, how there is a movement to mainline normalize something that is very different from going to the dermatologist and burning a mole
That's
off.
right.
Or, we talk about when you're growing up. When I was growing up, getting plastic surgery was pretty dramatic thing. I mean, people
Sure.
said, "Oh, should you be natural? Just learn to love who
Yep.
you are. Don't get your nose
That's
adjusted.
right.
Don't." Now, of course, in this society, nobody thinks twice about it. They get a facelift. I mean, I remember the conversation. I think Donahue did an hour about facelifts and who's wealthy enough to do it, what the consequences are, and the health consequences. Now that debate is over. But they're trying to make the elimination, the murder of a human being, as uneventful and not notable as plastic surgery or getting a mole burned off of your body, and make that so socially acceptable with no question, no concern, no pondering whether this is right or wrong. And I think this is one way to do it. It's interesting in Richmond, you talk about the zoning issue back when I was on the radio. And this shows to me, it was another moment where I thought, God, how can the parties be so far apart? We have a science museum, which is right next to the Children's Museum on Broad Street in Richmond. Been there for years. My niece and nephew go there. The school kids go in the school buses and pull up. I got to believe that 20 or 30 years ago, responsible people, whether you're an evangelical Christian with a very strict moral code, or whether you're a bon vivant who really doesn't care about anything, live and let live, I'm not going to judge you, you would say it's inappropriate to put the hustler porn store in front of the Children's
Absolutely.
Museum and the Science
Sure.
Museum. In Richmond, Virginia, the state capital of Virginia, they let that happen. And so
Unbelievable.
just the other week, I'm at the Science Museum with my family members, little kids, and their mom and dad. And I looked and I thought, here we are. This is exactly what I was warning against, where a family trying to have a nice outing with the little kids walks out the door to go to the car, and right across the street is the hustler porn store. And, I'm not going to debate with everybody about whether that store should be in Richmond, but I damn well tell you, I don't think it belongs in front of a place that families go with their kids.
And that's
I
exactly.
think they did it deliberately, like a middle finger to families and conservatives and people who do believe in public morals.
Sure.
I think they did it deliberately to be offensive to those folks.
And I think that's exactly why we have to look at this zoning stuff proactively. One of the biggest things, and it's interesting because the support, the public hearing we had for adopting this ordinance was unbelievable. We had close to 350 voicemails. In all those voicemails, there were only 3 in opposition. We had 70 people show up and speak. Out of the 70 people that showed up to speak, I think there was 10 or less that were in opposition. So it was a wildly popular thing to do in Lynchburg. And when you look at the communities that we have here in Virginia, there's a lot of communities just like Lynchburg that have those values. And zoning is a tool that we can use to preserve that harmony in our communities, to make sure that we don't disrupt things, just like you said, right? And that I need to get some photos of that, if you can send them my way, and I can use that as an example of maybe looking why we need to set some other restrictions.
They wrote about it at the time, and honestly, Marty, I looked and I thought, look, even the Democrats in the city of Richmond are going to say this is a no-brainer. Don't do this. There's so much dumpy, nasty territory in the city of Richmond where we're not trying to bring tourists and where you wouldn't take a kid, that there's a location. If you want to open some trash porn store, you can do it and no one will even care.
That's right.
But to do, I really do think it was a deliberate, in your face, to hell with you and what you think, we're going to do this just to stick it to you.
And I don't doubt that at all.
I'm not the kind of person who sits back and allows that to happen without calling you on it. And everybody else in Richmond apparently didn't have a problem with it, or they're too scared to speak up about it. So I'm glad that you're making that statement in Lynchburg. I think it's important because the having campaigned extensively in Lynchburg, the mindset of people who have chosen to be around Liberty University and to be in Lynchburg is very different than the mindset, obviously, of the city of Richmond, or certainly people. Sure. And you have a right to run your community and curate your community as you see fit. I think so responsible. Too. Yeah.
And I've heard from people on the abortion zoning issue that I wouldn't call Republicans or conservatives. That said, you know what? You're right. We shouldn't have that next to a high school. We shouldn't have that next to a church. So I do think that it's not it's supporting that type of, by right ability to just put things. It's what it is. It's compatibility in your land use, right? We need to make sure that we protect those areas in our localities that are where families go, and keep them family oriented.
Yeah. The effort to dominate the culture never seems to end, and the normal rules or gentleman's agreement that existed years ago seems to have completely evaporated. And that's disturbing. I think that's going to cause a lot of cultural upheaval, and it's unnecessary, even as we debate the bigger question of whether abortion is morally correct and whether this society should embrace it. Can we not agree to put these things in places where it's not in everybody's face, especially those who don't approve of it? That's
right.
That would seem to be a responsible agreement to reach. Marty,
it's reasonable.
Yeah. On the city council in Lynchburg, one of the at-large representatives there, I really appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
All right, let's take a quick break. Gosh, we are running a little long today. I apologize for that, but producer Dan will join us, and we'll talk about some of the wrap-up issues before we head into the weekend on the Reid Revolution. So during the break, producer Dan, I'm checking on Twitter, on X, just to see if there's any movement here. I just can't believe that the Supreme Court, who jumped in here, I think totally wrong. Just such a pathetic decision that they made to go ahead and allow this thing to happen. Like, we'll decide afterwards. I would have respected them more, honestly, had they said, we're overruling this law and we're just going to let the referendum happen because we're not going to obey the law, or we're going to concoct something instead of punting and saying, oh, we'll deal with it later. Give me a break. I mean, come on, guys. Thank God you're not reffing the NFL, the Super Bowl or something with this
Right.
kind of mindset that you can get with. But I'm not seeing anything having happened yet.
This brings up a larger genus macro issue with the law that I've had. I have been a critic for a long time of this notion. Oh, let's just pass this law, pass this policy, and put it into effect, and we'll just see if years later the courts strike it down. I think a lot of this stuff should go through judicial vetting before it ever takes effect. I hate the fact that we put into effect policies that we often know won't pass judicial muster, but in the meantime, people's lives can be uprooted, destroyed, et cetera, until a court
Well, they know
comes in
this is the lawfare that we've been talking about.
It's
so this will
I
be a
can't stand
chapter in the book that I'm working on, Dan. I'm working on something about defamation and libel, and I do think that's becoming a larger problem now, especially with social media spreading lies like this, and then you can never undo it. There's always been that issue, but I will tell you, I think we've got to recalibrate with care how we manage our legislative process, because to your point, I promise you there are people at the state capitol who say, we got the votes, let's pass it. It'll be years before somebody actually gets standing, gets to go before a judge, finds a judge who will actually be willing to hear it, a court that will actually be willing to hear it. And it's one of the reasons why, regrettably, I'm not on board with the gay marriage amendment that the Democrats have put in, because it's not just about gay marriage. I support gay marriage. I hope to be in a gay marriage. And I have no intention of forcing any church to be involved in it. If you don't like that,
no, there's a violation of rights wrinkle in there. That's the problem.
I'm fine. Look, I'm not trying to force you to believe what I believe. It's totally fine. You can run your church any way you want to. But here's the problem with what the Democrats have done. They're not just repealing the ban on gay marriage, which I think was wrong in the first place, and I didn't vote for it. I voted for George Allen that day, and I voted against the gay marriage ban that day, very proudly as a Republican. Hell no. I thought that was a bad plan, and I think it should be ripped out of the Constitution. And, it's moot because the Supreme Court has made the decision they're making. But the Democrats are not stupid. They're very conniving. They're very devious. They have put up an amendment that they know the vast majority of Virginians who no longer see gay marriage as a problem, or, are not personally hostile and offended by it. And that's not everybody. I met everybody who is offended last year. I can promise you that. But I think it's going to pass, but they have deliberately written it in a way, to your point, where they will flood the zone with lawsuits about the trans issue, because they've specifically used the language, the gender language, that's going to open this up to lawsuits. And they know over the course of 2 or 3 years, they will find people who will file suits. They'll get a couple of hundred lawsuits. All they need is one to, it's like the sperm swimming to the egg. You just need one to hit. And now you've opened up an entire new legal battlefront. And that's why they've chosen this language. It's not because they're for gay marriage. It's not an issue for them right now. This is a very devious way to use something that they've won public acceptance on to try to push the issue even farther. And I think that's pretty, it's pretty deviant. And I'm against having that kind of cultural upheaval. And that's coming from me, somebody who for 25 years has been very unpopular, saying what I think should be the situation in our society. And I'm saying stop this at this point.
Well, I mean, at least the way that I react to all of this, I think back to something that I think Calvin Coolidge said years ago, when he said that the number one objective or responsibility of a legislator is to stop bad legislation, not pass good legislation. You can always put into effect a good policy, but it's really, really hard once a policy is enacted to stop it if it's bad.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's the first time I've heard Calvin Coolidge quoted. I know my dad used to say that, so I'm gonna attribute that to him because that was his goal. Is I
Yes,
just need to
stop
try to
bad
kill
bad
bad stuff
legislation.
from happening.
Yep.
Obamacare is a perfect example. That got jammed through, and now we're stuck with it. And nobody has the guts to actually tell Americans, we can't afford this. This has made healthcare terrible in America. Yeah, you've got a piece of paper that says you've got the right to get healthcare, but the healthcare stinks, and it's deteriorating right in front of our face. And the system, the private system of insurance and medical facilities, is now all built around this horrible Obamacare uh, structure. And so, really, the only thing, I mean, I think all of this is coming crashing down when the economy collapses under $39 trillion of debt that nobody wants to deal with. And then we'll have an opportunity to rebuild it. And we will be making a choice as a society. Do we go to the left with a communist, socialist mindset, or do we take this opportunity to rebuild with a capitalist freedom mindset? And I'm afraid that if that decision had to be made right now, you'd get a bunch of communists and socialists who would take over, which is why I think they're pushing so diligently for a collapse.
Of course, Obamacare was always supposed to fail in what it was. It was
and
force
us into
yeah. So
universal health care paid for by the working people. Yeah,
that was the con of it all.
Yep. So. Can we play? We started out the program talking about Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, being arrested. And again, it doesn't seem to me, even Hugh, who tangentially knew Prince Andrew back in the day, says he's a jerk. I don't know the guy. Sarah Ferguson came to Richmond, and I interviewed her on Channel 8. And, of course, we were all excited. Oh, my gosh, the Duchess is here. I don't think she was technically a Duchess at the time the divorce had happened or whatever. But we were all excited to meet Sarah Ferguson. And now she may get dragged into this. And I do want, look, never misunderstand what I'm saying. If somebody's abused children or abused women or abused men, taken advantage of people, especially sexually, I'm not defending that.
Not at all.
But I have to say, tap the brakes here and be sure we know what we're actually discussing. What are the actual allegations, and what's the evidence about those allegations? Because as I pointed out to Hugh, I saw a picture, and all these people were commenting, like 5,000 comments, of Prince Andrew rolling a ball to a little kid. I guess it was a little boy, 2, 3 years old maybe. And I'm like, well, how do I know that I mean, could that be his grandkid or his niece or nephew? Or did he go over to the neighbor's house and, oh, wow, yeah, the prince is here, he's going to play with the kid? I mean,
that image in and of itself is benign. Yeah.
Yes, and I think if we're going to be honest and fair people, you have to be able to step out of your presumptions of guilt, right? We're supposed to presume that people are innocent, and you have to prove they're guilty. Let's do that. Even with somebody that you are skeptical of, and I'm skeptical of Andrew. I mean, there are too many people who are saying too many things about him, and clearly he was hanging out with Epstein. But what does that mean? I can tell you, I had friends in my 20s who were regularly snorting coke. I don't know if they were buying it or selling it. They knew me well enough to know that they should not discuss that kind of stuff with me, and I didn't want to know about it. And it's not my job to be the cop to police everybody around me. I have that mindset. You do you. I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
I don't have a badge. I'm not here to arrest you. But I could see somebody saying, "Oh, well, John knew this person, therefore John was doing coke." Heck no. I've never even smoked pot, and apparently I'm the last person on the planet to have never smoked pot. But you can guilt by association is a real thing, and I think we really should pull some perspective here. Like, if you're gonna, what is the accusation, and let's prove it now. What is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, presumption of innocence is a very important topic to me, and
Yeah.
I try to talk about this from a philosophical standpoint, which they don't teach this in law school. They need to teach this in law school. I don't think that they can teach.
Reminder
this in law school,
that producer Dan went to William and Mary Law.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, exactly. But why do we have this thing? If not for a presumption of innocence, if we had a presumption of guilt instead, we're essentially asking somebody accused of something, some defendant, where is your evidence that there is no evidence?
Right.
And that's that's untenable. As we were talking about a week ago, unless you have some counter positive to prove that negative, you can't in the abstract, in the aggregate, just prove that negative. I was alone in the woods. I can't tell you that nobody witnessed that I wasn't at the scene of this crime or whatever. But essentially, the presumption of guilt would be the idea you need to show me something to prove nothing, and you can't do that. Something
Prove
isn't
you
nothing,
didn't
and
do
nothing
it.
isn't something.
Prove you didn't do it.
You can't do it.
And that's not our system. And when people talk seriously, Dan, I mean, I know we're getting close to the end of the time we've got here, but this is important. When people talk about what is Western culture, what is American culture, this is this is different from what you see in other parts of the world.
It was revolutionary.
And revolutionary mindset that we have taken for granted, and we're about to lose it if we don't clearly articulate that this is a principle that we believe in, and it has to apply to everybody. So that's one thing. President Trump. Let's play the clip from Trump talking about Andrew.
As I look for that and get that up, I'll say it's not merely an American principle, but also a good principle. It is a logical principle. The presumption of innocence is good. But here's Trump on Andrew.
Andrew arrested by the police there, related to something with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think people in this country at some point, associates of Jeffrey Epstein, will wind up in handcuffs too?
Well, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. That's very nice. I can actually speak about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing. To see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
I mean, he knows what the deal was. And if you believe, again, I second guess everything that I'm told, but if you believe the documents that are out there, I don't know if I believe them, but I'm inclined to think that if they could have used this to bring Trump down, if there was a smoking gun that they could take Trump down under the Biden administration, they would have done it. Is that unreasonable for me to conclude?
No.
They tried everything else. So I'm thinking that this story about Trump being the one to call the cops and say, this guy's a bad guy and that Maxwell woman is a bad guy, and tell people this is a problem and ban Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. I think that's true. My instinct is that it's true, and but it's concerning that it's clear what they're doing here. They're trying to go after Andrew, and then they're going to try to come through, and they're attempting to sully Trump. I think Trump may have been the guy who is truly vindicated. Trump always says that he's never done anything wrong, but I think in this case he may be telling the truth. Like, I'm the one that told you what was going on here, and everybody ignored me.
Yep. Well,
maybe
he has a track record of kind of being vindicated on a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He goes out on a limb and everybody goes crazy, and then a year or 2 or 3 later, it's like, oh, it turns out he was right about what he said. So
the other thing, if Donald Trump, I don't want to turn this into a discussion of Donald Trump, but I will for a second. If Donald Trump was as bad as people say, all of these former staffers who were in the office with him on a regular basis, both in his building business, construction business, and real estate business, and at the White House, they would keep their mouths shut because they wouldn't want to be dead. And I think that it's really telling. I've known some bad guys where people were like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything about that because
Yeah, they were
that
fair.
would be a problem. And Democrats behave that way. I mean, think of all the people who are silenced on a regular basis because the Democrats have told you very clearly, and they've demonstrated, we will destroy your business, we will protest, and we will screw up everything about your life if you don't keep your mouth shut. I mean, the only thing they let you do is vote, and now we got to question whether the votes are actually counted correctly.
I don't want to be the 70th friend of Bill and Hillary Clinton to commit suicide. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing.
It's,
So.
I am. I mean, and you know what we should do a show on that someday, where the
Right.
allegation is what is the allegation? The allegation is that many friends of Bill and Hillary Clinton, not just people they met on the campaign trail and shook hands with, took a picture with, but many associates, business and political and personal, have committed suicide. I mean, I've had a couple of people around me who've committed suicide, but it's not a large number. In the last decade, I don't even know that I could point out someone in the last decade who's done that. But this is the problem we're devolving into. It used to be that you go to the grocery store and you'd look at the headlines on the National Examiner and you kind of realize, that's just them. For some reason, it's okay for the National Examiner to kind of make up stories, it seemed. Now that stuff is pumped mainstream through social media, and people's lives are being destroyed by it. And I think we, as a culture, talk about a Western culture, we should return to a little more stoic and objective analysis of the accusations that are being made and the like. We'll see what Abigail Spanberger does when she gives the response to President Trump's State of the Union next week on the 20th. What is that, Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, I think.
Yeah, Tuesday. Let's make sure before I get it wrong. Yeah, Tuesday night.
I'm laughing now because I'm thinking of my favorite clip of the week that I sent and showed you, and that I actually have in the can that I'd love to play if I have 10 seconds to do so.
What is it? Which one is that?
Well, the moral of the story here is, folks, be careful about going on national TV and lying, okay?
I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette. I'm sitting here because I love him. He's Mary and Joseph.
Yeah. But you had a different reaction than America did. Even in hindsight, America saw that, and that won them a lot. Their poll numbers went up because people felt bad that they.
That's some
had
solid method
that.
acting. I wonder if she was practicing that Southern accent in the mirror. I ain't no way. Is it tired? Tired?
Spanberger is responding to the President's State of the Union address on Tuesday, our governor, and this is a big moment for her. She will have the national stage. The problem is it's also going to be an opportunity for us to point out that the modern Democrat runs on one set of issues and then turns on a dime and says something else. So for months, I listened to Abigail Spanberger as she was campaigning and I was campaigning all across Virginia, and they were constantly talking about affordability. Constantly, nonstop. It's good message discipline. I'll give them credit. But, your message has to translate into policy once you're elected. And she has chosen, she and her party have decided to throw affordability right out the window. Everybody's bills are going up, from your energy bill to your water bill to what it's going to cost for you to do business in Virginia. There is no commitment to affordability. And she may be personally excited that she's going to be on national TV responding to Donald Trump. But I will tell you, there are people like me who are going to make sure that she's held accountable, as she and her friends are held accountable for the lie that they told to Virginia voters, because it was a lie and they knew exactly what they were doing. They were very deceptive about it, and they need to be held accountable for that. Real quick, before we go, this is a sad story, and you had not seen this before I sent it to you, Dan?
I had not. It really
so
broke
this
me
poor
up,
monkey,
actually.
this poor monkey named Punchka in Japan. He's at the Ichikawa City Zoo in Japan. He was rejected by his mom. You have the little video here, Dan?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And this is
So his mom rejects him. I don't know. I'd like to know if there's a, zoologist or somebody who studies primates who could explain why his mom would reject him. I mean, what's wrong with this little guy? looks normal to me. I don't understand it, but you can't figure it out sometimes with animals. They reject.
He was getting picked on by other monkeys. Here was the
and
one
the other monkey.
This is a little tough, folks. But
oh yeah, look at this. They grab him and it's like they're going to try to kill him or something.
And he runs.
And see, he runs away and he goes and gets his little stuffed animal that I think he thinks is his mother, looking for comfort. And so yesterday, I don't know, suddenly my feed was filled with videos of this poor little monkey named Punch. So today, apparently, at the Ichikawa City Zoo in Japan, there is another monkey, an adult monkey that is groomed. You know how they sit there and they pick the bugs off of each other? And I guess that, I don't know this, but I'm told that's a sign that you're accepted in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, or that you've been adopted. I don't know. I won't go so far as to say it's a love situation. I don't know that that's true, but you're accepted on some level because somebody's willing to pick the bugs off of you. And so poor little Punch Ka, this monkey, has been accepted by at least one of the other monkeys. But I saw that and I thought, you know what? We'll just end with that story. I don't know if it's a hopeful story. I don't know if it's a sad story or where it's going to end. But you go check your Facebook feed and your Instagram feed, TikTok feed. I think you'll find that this story is very interesting. It's one reason why I encourage everybody, one time in your life, whether you go to Lion Country. Remember when they had Lion Country Safari at King's Dominion? You don't, because you weren't here when it was.
Maybe before my time.
Yeah,
maybe before my time.
Even if it's something like that, where you go and you spend a couple hours, don't just do a 15-minute drive-through while you drink a Diet Coke out of a straw. Go and sit and watch animals. It is very illuminating, and it is very grounding, I think. I've done a couple of full-scale safaris in Africa, and they're disturbing because you're basically going to watch the animals kill each other. But if you sit silently long enough and you watch how the animals interact with each other of the same species, and then how they're territorial and there's a pecking order, you just pick a snapshot of some place in the jungle or on the Sahara, and you pick a place that you're going to watch. It's really fascinating to see. I think we could probably, there are hunters in Virginia who would tell you probably that you could see the same type of thing if you were just a quiet hunter in the hunting stand watching the animals, of course with a different goal for them. But anyway, I thought that was a very interesting story to end on.
Well, before we depart, wanted to remind everybody about the Best of Richmond 2026 nominations in Style Weekly. If you're in Central Virginia, or even if not, I don't think there's a geographic zip code limitation.
No, you don't get kicked out. If you're watching us from West Hollywood today,
I'll put that graphic
weigh in on the Best of Richmond contest. There's a best podcast category. I used to try to win the best radio program, and I did win that for 7 years running in a number of different publications, Style, and then it was weird because Style went out of business. I won, what was it? One best media personality or something, and then Style immediately went out of business. And now it's back in a different format digitally with Virginia Public Media. But I'd certainly appreciate your nomination vote now, which runs till the 28th. And then we'll probably have some other contests too. I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world. It's not like an Academy Award where you're going to be able to cash in on it. But it would certainly be a validation that just a couple of months into our program, that this is perceived as one of the best.
Yeah, we're trying to work the kinks out. I realize there's still a few kinks that we're trying to work out, but we're getting there.
So look, what happened earlier?
Well, I think with Tim, we just had a bad connection just somewhere
it was
on
bad
the route.
cell
I'm guessing
service.
460 is probably what he was on. I imagine just driving 460 from Virginia Beach to Tazewell, the way he was describing it. And then just when we have a recorded interview, just a lot of moving parts that have to be dealt with really quickly. And I think we just got some glitches in the process.
Well, somebody texted me, and they were, I don't know. I mean, don't be mad about it. Well, I'm the one that should be mad about it. You should be mad about it. But they were kind of critical. And I said, look, we're one of the few podcasts that does a live show. You may have noticed this Almost everybody else does a pre-recorded show, and then they edit it, and they they have a script in front of them. You may have noticed I don't have a script in front of me. This is not all pre-written, And it's dangerous to do that, because when you're actually speaking without a script, you might say something that somebody tries to beat you up with, but I don't care.
We're used to it.
Whatever you think is whatever you think. It's fine. You may love me, you may hate me. I'm not worried about it anymore. I don't know. I've reached that place in life. I wish I had $1 million so that I could have that money where you don't have to worry about it in a practical sense.
And the other,
what do they call
the other
that?
danger is we talk about off
money
all the time. Yeah, right.
That's what they call it.
And then even better, F me money. But that's I think what Elon Musk has. But the other danger, of course, is, and we talked about this off air, and this could have been an issue. It's why we rescheduled Tim from last night recorded to trying to do live today. Is with this injunction that came out yesterday. Everything's moving so fast and so many moving parts with this redistricting case that we could record something a night ago and it could be out of date by this morning. So that's also why we do this
the difference, live. Dan. I worked for many years in live news, live TV shows. You didn't tape anything. I mean, you taped maybe the recording that the reporter did in the field when you had to, but everything else was live. And I just kind of grew up thinking that's the way it should be, is whatever's happening right now is what you're talking about. And you don't try to make it perfect at the expense of the contemporary analysis or the news at the moment. But, we'll see how that goes. All right. You got big plans for the weekend, or you?
Well, we kind of both. Should I announce what we're doing?
Oh yeah, this is interesting. Yeah,
we're going to the Richmond Forum together to see Andrew Yang and Joe Manchin, and I'm trying to remember who else is the other guest. Hold on, I have.
It's the fake Republican. What's that guy's name?
It's let's see here. Justin. Oh yeah, is it
Justin Amash?
Right? Amash, yeah, That
is
guy.
He still a Republican, or has he dropped out?
He may become an independent or whatever else.
Hold on.
But
Up next,
Joe Manchin, talking about
Yang,
the two-party problem tomorrow night at the Altria. So
rethink the future of America's two-party system with a trio of voices disrupting the red versus blue paradigm. So does that really accomplish that if you've got Joe Manchin and Andrew Yang, right, both of them Democrats, and Justin Amash, who I don't know. I mean, I need to read where he is today. I don't think anybody would have confused him with a right-wing conservative, would you?
No. I reckon that you and I will have a fair amount to say about that come Monday morning's show at this time.
See, this is one reason why I started the Virginia Forum.
Right.
Because here you're having an event. I'm looking at Justin. He's 45 years old, American lawyer and politician, from Michigan. He's second Palestinian American. Okay, I think that begins to reveal a little bit about this. Oh, he joined the Libertarian Party after leaving Congress. So you have two Democrats and a Libertarian who are going to go on stage, I think, and just trash Republicans. I suspect that what's going to happen. I'm still going to go. Even though, I have to grudgingly say the Richmond Forum does a good event and it's very polished. One of the problems I've had with them over the years, and a lot of these forum groups around the country, is they do what they've done here. They exclude conservatives and they bring in somebody who's not really a conservative. It'd be as stupid as bringing in, what's her name? Cheney.
Liz Cheney, yeah.
Liz Cheney, bringing in Liz Cheney and saying, oh, here's a Republican.
We invited a Republican, yeah.
She's going to articulate, is Trump doing a good job? We have Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney.
The J6 committee with our two Republicans, Liz Cheney.
Give me a break. And that's what they do all the time. And I got tired of it. So instead of just complaining, it's the new mantra in my life. Don't just complain about stuff. Set things up and make something happen that you approve of. So we're bringing Jamie Franklin, who is a young woman, a Christian conservative Republican who worked in the Trump campaign originally and worked at the White House. She's coming not this Friday, not tonight, but next Friday at the Virginia Forum at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. And there's a special deal for this week where you can get tickets at a special price for President's Day. And if you're a student, high school student or college student, don't just show up and expect a free ticket, but you can get a free ticket to see Jamie Franklin by going to thevirginiacouncil.org, thevirginiacouncil.org. There's some of the other speakers we've had: Doug Wilder, Douglas Murray, Andy No. You saw the actor Kevin Sorbo there. Again, I am so sick and tired of people who constantly complain but then never do anything in a proactive way to say, okay, you do you. I'm going to create my own opportunity here. I'm going to try to make this look like I think it should look like, and that's what we're doing with the Virginia Forum. So I hope if you're in Richmond, I certainly hope you'll come to that event next Friday at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. And if you're from out of town, it might be worth checking out too. Jamie Franklin, and the tickets are at the virginiacouncil.org. Speaking of emails, real quick, since we're wrapping up for the week, if you've got a guest that you think everybody hasn't heard from, and maybe it's somebody who's really interesting, I'm interested in talking to people who haven't done the Fox tour of every media outlet in America. I would love to talk to people who have a really strong, informed point of view on this program and give them a chance to start talking to people across the country. If you've got a new idea, the reidrevolution@gmail.com, the reidrevolution@gmail.com. Producer Dan's checking it all day and all night.
Yep.
And we'll also start limited advertising in March because somehow I got to pay the bills. You do too, Dan.
Yeah,
so if you're
you and me both, brother.
If you're interested in being a sponsor of the program, please let us know at the reidrevolution@gmail.com. Okay. We went over by an hour and 13 minutes. I'm getting better at this, Dan.
Is that what we're calling it?
1 hour and 13 minutes over. Who's complaining? Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday morning on the Reid Revolution.
Mary and Joseph.